Hey guys, what's up? Alec Torelli here. Thanks for being here. I'm pumped to do this. Happy Wednesday. I hope things are going well, and I'm trying to bring a little bit of positivity into some tough times. Heart goes out to New York and everybody that's struggling right now. It's tragic to see what's happening. I'm still in Italy, as you guys know, and man. Outside it's rough, but hopefully inside we can have a good talk today and some fun strategy. Get a chance to call in. If you guys want to call in, you can join the Zoom link below in the description, and you could hop on a video conference call. You could be on video or just audio if you want. And after this, I'll be taking questions from you guys as well. So exciting agenda here today. One of my clients, Mac, who was actually in the last video on YouTube, how to plan out your bluffs. That was him in that video. He's actually here with me live today, and I'm gonna walk you through a mini downplayed version of our coaching session. We're not gonna go super into the lab and do some of the things we've been doing, like running equity calculations and doing calculators, because we're gonna try and keep this fun and entertaining. But we will do like a live hand review, so it'll be a live hand of the day. One of the things that clients really like is when I review hands live for the first time. And so this hand, Mac sent it to me a couple days ago. I forwarded it to my team. We got it in the replayer, and then I sent it back to Mac to make sure it was all right. And he said yes, but I haven't seen the hand. So I actually don't know the results. I don't know the hand. I don't know the action. I just know it was a hand he played online. So I'm going to be reviewing it live in real time. So that'll be part of the fun. I might say something really stupid. I might look smart. Who knows? But I did that because I wanted you to be able to see, my thoughts about the hand in real time, and just kind of like my raw thought process without prepping, without studying and going into the lab. So these are fun things that I do for clients too, where they send me their hands in an email, and then I review them live while I'm recording my screen. So I tried to simulate that for you guys here in real time. I'll be taking questions, so type in chat if you have any questions. We'll be pausing to answer some of those. What's up, Lee, Matthew, Danny? Thank you guys so much for being here. What else? Man, you guys saw my last couple videos, what was going on here, but a quick update. Outside it's tragic what's going on, but inside I've been inside for like 45 days, and I actually just heard, we don't know yet what's happening, but apparently it's going to be close to another month before we're allowed to go outside and go on walks. So we're not even allowed outside of the house, so we're not even allowed to go on walks or to the park or on runs or bike rides. So it's been a long time. Luckily we have, I do yoga at home, I have a bike at home, and so I exercise and stuff like that, but it's apparently going to be close to another month. So look for more YouTube lives. What can I say? I'll be putting out a lot more content. So if you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me. If you haven't been to a YouTube live before, welcome. And I'm excited to do these, and it's a good way to connect and trying to make lemons out of lemonade. It is what it is. So let's get Mac on here. Mac, you there, buddy? Yep. Everybody in the chat, let Mac know if you can hear him and see him. Say hi, and watch my last video on YouTube as well, because Mac is featured in that. He was kind enough to share hands with me, and then also put him out for public scrutiny. Sometimes the rail can be can be the rail. So, Mac, what's up, man? Why don't you tell him a little bit about what games and stakes you play, where you're from, and give him a 30-second rundown.
Sure, no problem. I played a lot of poker about 20 years ago. That was back in the old Lemon days, and I got out of it for about 15 years, and I fired up about 8 months ago. I've been playing micro stakes online and spending a lot of time in the lab. So lots of homework, lots of reading, lots of learning, and just trying to take my game to the next level now. So it's been a lot of fun. It's an interesting ride. Lots to learn, no doubt about that. I'm really enjoying it. Especially the coaching's helped me a lot this last month.
Yeah, I'm glad you've liked it, and we've done a lot together in the lab. And Mac is one of my clients I'm the most proud of. He's worked super hard, and especially for where he's at in his poker journey, relatively new, right? 6-7 months into it. It's not like he's been playing a decade. But the work that he puts in and the curiosity he has about the game is is impressive to see, and I think that's going to take him very far. So Mac, I'm excited for your progress. I'm excited for this hand too. I know you like doing these live hand reviews, so let's do it. You ready to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to bring up a hand replayer here. Again, I'm flying blind. I know you have 3-5 of spades because you told me you want to review the 3-5 of spades hand. So that much I do know. Guys, I'm hearing from the chat, thank you, Reggie, Matthew, Derek, that they're having trouble hearing you.
Is this better? Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, let Mac know if this is better. Talk a little bit louder. I'm going to turn up my volume on the speakers too, in case that's it. Matthew can hear you, but other people are having trouble. Let us know.
Sorry, I've got a new mic here. Is this better? Can you guys hear me better now?
I think that's better because I hear you a lot better. We are going to hop into the hand replayer. Uh-oh. I'm hoping there's no trouble hearing you.
Still not good? Too many people can't hear me?
Let's see here. We're going to fix it, guys. Hang on. Be patient. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience, guys. Yes, I think that's better. I hear 2 yeses, Samuel and Jay. All right, good. Thanks for that. Guys are awesome while we're troubleshooting here. Let's do this. We are going to open this hand. I know you got the 3-5 suited, so it's definitely going to be a fun hand because I know you got the 3-5 suited. Now it's much better. Okay, great. Guys, we're going to the hand replayer. We're going to do it. This is it. So Mac, you are in the big blind with 3-5. We're going to go through the hand. And Mac uses these small stakes cash games online as a great method of practice, not just while on lockdown, but just in general. One of the things I always recommend my clients to do is just to play some online, or if you can't play online, you can play against, an AI, you can play against Poker Snowy and just get experience playing. And then we can use those simulations to run, use these hands to run simulations in the lab or to study or review. And they're great experience. They're great, even playing 1 cent, 2 cent. It doesn't matter about the size. It's about the units. It's about the experience. It's about the process. If you want to get better at chess, you don't have to play for money. You can go on chess.com and play for free, and you can get better. And that's what you're doing here. You're just simulating things, and you get a lot of experience in these games here. So open to 6 cents. And, okay, I think here we got a pretty standard call in the big blind, right, Mac? Not too much to say about that one?
That's right. There is one thing that I saw ahead of time, though. The hijack had taken my blind from me twice. So I looked on my HUD and I noticed something that stuck out to me. His middle position raised first in was 40%, and his C bet was 100%.
Wow.
So those are all factors I had in my head going into this hand because it's important. It was something I noticed on him that I was trying to decide how to play against.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people have asked about whether or not to use stats when playing online poker, and don't want to get too into the nitty-gritty necessarily for those that are just starting out or getting used to it or haven't really played online. You might be a little bit overwhelmed using stats in the beginning. But one of the things, as Mac pointed out, that's really helpful to know is imagine if you could know that your opponent continuation bets the flop, meaning after he raises pre-flop, he bets the flop 100% of the time. Like, that's super valuable information, and I'm glad you told me that because now we can analyze this hand from a little bit deeper of a perspective and use some exploitative reads to go through the hand. So I'm glad you told me that. Let's hop in here. You call. I'm sure we got some piece of this board, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So we flop bottom pair. Not a great flop here. So I would be checking here and just basically hoping he checks. What are your thoughts, Mac?
So I'm going to check too, but I'm very confident he's going to bet. That would be the difference in our thinking right now. So
yeah,
I'm convinced he's going to bet. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and like you have the foresight of knowing he's c-betting 100% of the time. If I knew that as well, I would expect him to bet. And then because of that, while this might normally be a fold against someone with a modest continuation betting frequency, meaning someone that's going to check this flop and give up with their air. Hands like Queen Jack, are going to give up. Hands like Ace Queen are going to give up because this is a flop that connects with the types of hands the big blind can have. So you shouldn't expect your opponent to c-bet here often. Therefore, when you have bottom pair with no backdoor straight draw, no backdoor flush draw, you can let this go.
But against someone who's c-betting literally 100% of the time, and furthermore, who's opening pre-flop 40% of the time, his range is what we call wide, meaning there's so many hands that he can have that we just have to call here, and we have to see what happens. Is that what you're thinking, Mac?
I take a different tact. But you'll see. Go ahead. You can go ahead and play this part.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, this is where it gets good. Guys, what are you thinking there in the chat? Before we get to the results here, type out what you would do here on this flop and why. Would you be calling here, folding, or raising? And let me know why. Best answer gets a virtual high five. I don't know if I can give you one of those while I'm streaming here on chat, but I will do it in spirit. So drop me your thoughts here. I'd love to know. And it's always best to drop them before we get to the results so that you're not biased. All right, let's go to it. Oh, Mac goes for it here. The 29-cent raise. Okay, so I can see some merit in this play, but I'd like to know what you're thinking here.
Honestly, I'm thinking get rid of the high cards. I don't want to just call because then I haven't narrowed his range one bit when I go into the turn.
Right.
So I'm thinking this isn't a terrible flop for me. I got a small piece of it, but I think it's just as hard for him to hit. So I'm trying to see if a little bit of pressure backs him off the hand or not.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's not. I mean, obviously, if he has a better hand than you, he's not going anywhere. If he has a flush draw, or 9-10, or not that 9-10 is a better hand than you. I just mean if he has something made or that's drawing significantly, he's not going anywhere. But the good thing about this is that, like you said, if he has Queen Jack, one thing people probably don't necessarily think about all the time is that Queen Jack still has something like 25% equity, meaning Queen Jack is going to win this pot 25% of the time. That's significant. And if you could raise and deny, it's called denying equity. It's a fancy way for poker players to say folding out worse hands. Getting your opponent to fold. If you can get him to fold a hand with 25% chance of winning, that's a good situation to be in. So I can see that as the merit for raising here. You don't really get called by worse hands. And if you do get called by a worse hand, you're going to get bluffed off this pot. So that's something you have to realize right away here is that if your opponent has you beat, he's calling. Like if he has an 8, he's going to call, especially this type of opponent who playing 40%, c-betting 100%, he's not going anywhere. If he has a draw, he's going to call, and then you're going to check fold the turn. So you're going to get pushed off this pot if he has those types of hands. So the main reason for raising here, the real only value in raising, basically, is to get him to fold 2 high cards. Is that what you're thinking?
That's right. Yeah, knock out his junk.
Right, knock out his junk. I see Richard Lizard here saying you have a nut advantage. And that's an interesting concept to highlight here. And it's a little bit more of an advanced concept. It's this idea that this board connects more with the hands the big blind has than the hands the villain has. In other words, it's easier for the big blind, who's us, the hero, to have a hand like 6-9 or 6-4 because we're calling with more 6-9 and 6-4 hands than the villain is raising with those hands. So if you just look at a hand like 6-9, it's more likely that we call with 6-9 than it is the villain raises with 6-9, and that's simply because we're in the big blind. So we're going to get a good price, we're closing the action. We can call with more hands than he can raise with. So it's not the only factor to consider, but it's one factor to consider that this board connects more with our range of hands than it does with the villain's range of hands. Is that something you were thinking about too here on this board, Mac?
Absolutely. If there's high cards on that flop, I don't think I take this shot at it. So I wanted to see something low. It just worked out for me. I agree with that. I think I would have a nut advantage as well.
Yeah, so typically when boards are low and you're in the big blind, you're more likely to connect with them because it's a big blind special, as they call it. But if the board was high, like Queen Jack 5, I don't think you would take this line because the Queen and the Jack interact more with the villain's hands than your hands. Is that right?
100%. That's exactly the line that I was thinking.
Yeah, so I like your logic, and one thing I try to explore when, as you know, Mac, when we're working together, it's not only about making the right play, because even not that you're doing this, but even a monkey can type Hamlet in poker, right? Like you only have 3 options. You can call, raise, or fold. So, eventually you can make the right play, but you might make the right play for the wrong reasons, just because you only have 3 options and you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right. So that what's important here is why you're making the play you're making, and that's what I like to explore here when doing coaching or reviewing hands, is because I want to make sure that it's not just, you don't just get the right play for the wrong reasons, because it's still the wrong play. Because over the long term, if you make the right play for the wrong reasons, over the long term, you won't make the right play. So I think you have the right logic here. You raised for the right reasons. You could still make an argument for calling, because I think there is still merit in that, because you're realizing your equity. You're calling when your opponent is c-betting too often. You're just, you have a good hand and you're getting the right price. You're calling, but there is an argument for raising. You made the right argument for raising. Let's see what happens. He calls, obviously. Otherwise, I'm sure you wouldn't send me a hand where he just folds the flop and you choose over. See you, thank you, bye. So
that's right. And once he calls, his range is narrowed a lot.
Right. So what types of hands? Let's talk about that, guys. What are you putting the villain on when he calls the flop? Why don't you guys type in chat here? Derek, Matthew, Greg, you guys have been awesome. Rich Lizard, let us know what your Jay as well, what you're thinking he has here when he calls the flop. And Mac, what are you thinking here?
I think now I'm down to 8x, a pair, maybe a 6, flush draw.
Yep.
Something along those lines. A couple of made hands, a couple of draws.
Yeah, so it's actually, you can narrow it down a little bit in the sense that you can remove the hands that you wanted him to fold. So the hands that you wanted him to fold, like Queen Jack of diamonds, or Ace Queen, or 2 overs basically that didn't interact with his board, you can safely remove those hands. He's not going to be in here with Queen Jack of clubs. There's just no way. So he either has, but you can't really eliminate anything else. He still could have an overpair. He still could have a flush draw. He still could have a straight draw. He still could have some type of 7-6 hand, or 6-5, or maybe even 8-6, and he could still have some type of 8x type of hand. So there's a lot of things he can still have. We don't really know where we're at, and that's important to keep in mind. And this process that we're going through here, Mac, as you know, is part of the hand range funnel that I use to figure out what my opponents are holding. It's a hand reading methodology. It's you can see here on the right side the intro to hand reading. That's the PDF. You could download it for free at the link below, and it walks you through how to do this process on your own in real time and in the lab afterwards. So there's a download you can get access to. It's a 7-page PDF, and it explains this a lot more in detail. So I encourage you guys to check that out. It's totally free. All right, Mac, let's move on here. So we hit the turn. Okay, so it feels to me here like my default play would have been to check fold. Like if the turn was a queen or a deuce, yes, we're ahead sometimes when he has a draw, but there's too many hands that beat us, and the situation is too marginal. So I would just check fold here, even though some of the time we might check fold the best hand, but I think that would be my plan. But when we hit a 3 here, now it's so likely we have the best hand, simply because if he had a better hand than 2 pair on the flop, he would have raised. For example, if he had a set of 8s, when there's this draw heavy of a board, you would expect him to raise, especially someone who has a frequency of betting 100% of the time. Those people are typically aggressive players, and so I would expect them to raise the flop. So I would always expect my 2 pair to be good here, again, because if he had a better hand than that, I would have heard from him on a previous street. So now I would be betting for value, and I would be betting very big here. We don't want to bet like 20 cents here, get cute, and then have him call and give him a great price to draw against us when he's in position. So I would be betting big here. I would definitely be betting here. Those are a little bit of my thoughts. Mac, what were you thinking here?
I go from thinking I'm probably quite a ways behind to being pretty happy. A lot changes with that one card. A 5
Totally.
and a 3 are really the only ones that give me a comfortable feeling now, right?
Yeah, and a non-spade 5 or 3. I mean, the 3 of spades doesn't. I mean, it's a good card, but you're not slam dunk high fiving the dealer.
That's right. It's safe. I doubt that he has a straight, or he would have told me on the flop. So I think I'm in pretty good shape here right now, right? So I'm with you. My initial thought is lead right away. Keep it up, right?
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. So this is where, I think we got to point out the bet sizing here. I'm all for leading here in this spot, and I just think we have to go like 60 cents or close to pot, because of what we talked about. Like, you got to think about the odds you're giving your opponent here. So you're calling, he's calling 37 cents to win a pot of $1.10. So he's getting a great price, and you don't want to give him a great price when you're out of position, you don't know where you're at, and there's a ton of draws. So, so I would be betting a lot bigger here, and we've talked about this some of the time in the coaching calls too, in spots like these where the bet sizing is really, really important. So I would go 60 cents, and I think that makes a difference long term here. He's still going to call you, but you're charging him more to call you, so you're just getting more value for your hand. Also, the other thing that does is you notice here your stack to pot ratio on the river. You have a 1.58 into a pot of 1.45. It's a little bit awkward of a stack. I mean, it's about pot size, so you can still shove blank rivers, but it would be a little bit better if you had a little bit less, because he can call you more liberally on the river. So it just sets the hand up for a better play. And that's one thing you want to think about when you're sizing your bets on the flop or on the turn, is how much you're going to be left with on a subsequent street. It's called stack to pot ratio. So that's an important thing to keep in mind here. Okay, so the river comes down 8. Okay, so we have a stack to pot ratio. Let's just call it 1, meaning our stack size is equivalent to the pot size. Let's call it 1, just to round it for simplicity. Okay, so I don't see, first of all, I'd like to know what everybody on the rail here would do. Matthew, Derek, Jay, you guys have been awesome. Many more. Drop me your thoughts here in the chat. What would you guys do here on this river? Are you going to bet? Are you going to check? And if you check, what are you going to do when facing a bet? So I'd like to know your guys' thoughts before I get into mine and Max and the results, because those skew everybody's opinion. So I don't really see much reason here to bet. We don't beat any bluffs. I mean, that's not what I meant to say. We beat some bluffs. But my point is that we don't get bluffs to call us. So we don't get a worse hand to call. Okay, so we can't bet for value because no worse hand is ever going to call us. We also can't bet as a bluff because better hands aren't going to fold. So I don't see this as a bet just because it doesn't really accomplish much. What are you thinking, Mac, on the logic of betting?
So immediately when I see that 8, I'm nervous. I think my hand just shrank tremendously. So my first thought was check, but then I also thought if I'm playing my range, potentially that could be a good card for me. So I definitely had a little bit of dilemma in my head on this spot. I can have a full house. I can still have the straight. He has the busted draw. So have I done a good enough job of representing that strength? I'm not sure.
Right. So that's a good point. Mac is saying that the 8, it still is a card that is perhaps more likely to be a card that the big blind is holding. There's more types of 8 hands, 8x hands that the big blind can have. So I can see what you're saying here, that this card could potentially be good for your range. Therefore, it's a good situation to bet, from a theory standpoint, almost independent of the cards that you're holding. But from a practical standpoint, I think it's important here to analyze what your bet accomplishes. So one thing you always want to ask yourself before making a decision is just, what do I accomplish with this bet? So you don't really get, there's 2 types of things you can accomplish. You can either get worse hands to call, and that's when you're betting for value, or you could get better hands to fold, and that's when you're bluffing. So worse hands to call, you're betting for value. Better hands to fold, you're bluffing. Worse hands don't really call. I mean, what worse hand can he? I mean, he can have worse hands. Don't get me wrong. He can have worse hands, like 9-10, or ace jack of spades, or king jack of spades, or ace 6, or whatever. But those hands can't call a bet. So he can have worse hands, but those hands can't call. Now, he can have better hands as well, but those hands don't likely fold. Like, for example, let's say for sure if he has an 8, he's not going to fold. That's obvious. But even if he has like jacks, okay, it's you could maybe represent an 8 and get jacks, try to get jacks to fold, but you have to think about it. All the draws missed. And the fact that an 8 came on the river means it's less likely you have 2-pair or a set, because the 8 removes the possibility that you have 2-pair. It removes some of those possibilities. For example, 8-7 suited, 8-7 of diamonds is no longer a hand you can have. 8-5 of diamonds is no longer a hand you can have. Pocket 8s, it goes from 3 combos to 1 combo. So the 8 actually makes it less likely you have a strong hand, and all the draws missed. I mean, you could have 5-6 and be bluffing. You can have 6x. You can have a straight draw. You can have a flush draw. So if he has a better hand than you, like 2 jacks or even like a 7, he's probably just not going to fold. Especially in these small stakes games against aggressive players, I just don't expect them to make hero folds. So I don't see a bet as accomplishing much. I just see a check here as a great play. And then I see a check call as a viable option, to be honest, because if he has a bluff, the best way to get him to put money in the pot is to get him to bet. Because if you bet, he's going to fold, but if you check, he's going to bet. So if you bet, he's going to fold, but if you check, he's going to bet. And that's a way you can win money from his bluffs. And if you think about it, you still lose the same money when you're beat. If you bet and he has you beat, he calls. If you check, he has you beat, he bets, you call. So your expectation is the same when he has you beat, but your expectation is greater when you have him beat. So you actually end up winning more money. I hope that makes sense. What are your thoughts?
Totally. I thought that if I checked and he bet, I would probably fold. That was my mindset, and I didn't want it to go that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't be thrilled about him betting, but then let's explore. Let's see what happens here. So you bet. Let me just explore what happens if he bets here before we get into it. If he bets after you check, the only types of hands he's really betting for value are 8x hands. He's not going to bet like 2 9s on the river. He's never going to bet 9s. It's just too thin. So, when his range is what is called polar, meaning it contains really strong hands or bluffs, there's typically more bluffs than strong hands. And so I would be pretty skeptical about him betting the river here. I would probably look him up, just because if he doesn't have an 8, he's probably bluffing. And there's a lot of bluffs here. He can have 9-10, maybe like a flush draw, a 6x type of hand. So I would be tempted to look him up depending on the size. We go 74 cents here. As I mentioned, not my favorite bet in this situation.
I played this hand 2 months ago, long before you started teaching me about the proper bet sizing.
Well, there you go. Play you wouldn't make today. So he calls with 9. So ironically, I think we actually could have, probably saved the money here, because if we checked the river, he's just going to check with 2 9s, and then we could just get the showdown for free. Which is why if he does bet, it kind of makes me like calling. But this is an interesting hand. It's definitely an interesting one, and I hope there was some stuff to take away here. Any final thoughts?
No, that was good. I think if I played it back, I would bet a lot harder on the turn, and if he calls and have a different tact after that. That's definitely something I've learned that I know I've been misplaying for a long time.
Yeah, and I know the bet sizes too was something that we worked quite a bit on as well, because they really do matter. You still would have got looked up here on this turn, but over time, when you double your bet size on the turn, that's just twice as much money you're putting in when you're a favorite, and that adds up over time. So bet sizing is quite a unique thing to work on there as well. So what? Any other questions here on this one, Mac? Following up.
No, I'm good, man. Appreciate you going through my hand.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to open it up to some questions here. So thanks, Mac. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time.
Okay.
We'll schedule a call this week. What's up?
Take care, man.
You
Appreciate
too,
it.
buddy. See ya.
Bye. Bye.
All right, guys. All right, going back to some chat. If you guys want to hop on the call and ask some questions yourself, there's a link in the description below. You can click that and jump on the call as well. And you can be on video. You can ask questions about this hand or questions in general. I'm happy to analyze this further or just chat about whatever, man. I'm here for you guys. Let's see who we got here. We got Matthew, Michael, Jay, Roberto. Thanks for being here, you guys. Appreciate it. Interesting analysis as well from all you guys. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. So quick update. Draw your attention to. I mentioned the intro to hand reading, so that's definitely something to check out. The membership at Conscious Poker is our premier product. There, we have a monthly membership. We have a group coaching call where we do stuff like this, but a little bit more formal and more in-depth hand reviews. Where I'll take you into the lab and show you exactly how I study in my review process. We also have a private Facebook group that's moderated by myself and a coach, and then there's courses inside there, and a new strategy video that comes out every week where I take hands from you guys that are members and then review them here. Finally, Preflop Mastery, that's discounted only during the YouTube live, so that'll be available for the next few minutes, half hour. So if that's something you're looking to improve upon your pre-flop game, Preflop Mastery is really the ultimate course for that. It's really a great product. So check those things out if you're interested. I would like to take a few questions here. So if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. Love to be a resource for you guys and answer anything that's on your mind about this or just in general, I guess, general poker strategy or just poker, whatever's on your mind. Could be something random that you want to know about me as well. I guess I don't know. I'm open to whatever. Yeah, let's see. So the Zoom link is in the description below. You can hop on there, and then I can put you on if you want to ask a question that way. Let's see what else. I had another hand, but I'm going to save that for Friday. I have another client that I'm working with. His name's Joel. Sends me. We have some hands coming out that he sent me that are coming out in the membership as well as on YouTube. Like the video I released, how to plan your poker bluffs. That was Mac, and he asked a question, and then I reviewed it in a hand, kind of like you saw here. That's in my last YouTube video, so check that out. Joel, we did the same thing where I have a hand coming out about him as well. And on Friday at the same exact time, we're going to be doing a very similar run through where he sent me a hand. I haven't seen it yet. So I'll be walking through my thoughts on that live, and he'll be on the call too. So that'll be fun. I'm trying to make this a regular thing. Maybe we'll do Wednesdays and Fridays. Yeah, I got some great content in the pipeline too. So I'm excited about that. We got a question here. Let's see. I see my man hopped on the call. All right, you are on. Inksa? I must be getting your name wrong because you maybe. What's up, man? Do you have video? You want to hop on video, or you just have a question here you'd like to ask? You're on the air, buddy. All right. While we let him get his chat going, I'm gonna answer a few questions here from you guys. So let's go back here to the replayer so that you guys can see the hand, because we have a question about the hand, and I want to make sure I get it. So with the heroes raise, sorry, hold on. Let me just pull up the. Okay, with the heroes raised on the flop, betting on turn and river, in higher stakes, do you see villain afraid of trips and folding his nines? Okay, so the question is from Mike, and he's basically saying if us, as the hero, were to raise the flop, bet the turn, and bet the river, would we be able to get the villain to fold nines? It's a tough fold. The higher stakes you play, the better players you play against, the more they're capable of making bigger folds. So there are certain types of players that are capable of folding over pairs. There are certain types of players that aren't. And one thing you have to ask yourself is just like, what types of hands am I representing here? So if you raise this flop and then you bet the turn and then you bet the river as the hero here, let's go back before we can see the results, okay? So let's imagine you're debating whether or not to bet this river. And you have to ask yourself, what types of hands am I representing? And the best way to do this is just to say, what would I do if I was in my opponent's shoes facing a bet? Again, what would I do if I was my opponent facing the bet that I'm about to make? Would you fold an overpair if someone bet here on the river? Probably not. I mean, you probably wouldn't do it. You might do it some of the time, but you're not going to just like throw it into the muck. I mean, all the draws missed. An 8 is less likely now because the 8 got on the board. So it actually makes it less likely that your opponent has 2 pair, a set, or a full house, because now there are fewer combos of those hands, right? So you're probably not going to fold an overpair. You're going to have to think about it. It's going to take a certain type of opponent or situation to get you to fold. There's often not general rules in poker where you can make. I mean, poker's a complex game. You can just like make rules about how you're going to act or whatever. But if you can take one thing to the bank, if you try not to get your opponent to fold an overpair, probably going to do pretty well in the game of poker. Them. They're not often going to fold an overpair. So if you don't try and get that through, probably going to do pretty well. All right, Steve, we got you on Zoom, man. What's up, buddy? You have a question? Steve.
Where'd it go?
There you are, my man. You want to be on video or no? No pressure, but sort of.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Do you want to be on video or no?
No, I'm on my iPhone, so I can't, I guess.
All right, talk to me, Steve. What's up, man?
Relative, not to this hand, but how do we do, 8s through 10s out of position when you raise and get 3-bet? I'm having problems with that.
Yeah, that's one I get so often. How to play those mid pairs out of position. Man, yeah, that's like the question I get the most often. It's always like 8s through jacks where you're like your hand is too strong to fold, but not strong enough to 4-bet. Where you're like you want to get action, but not too much action, and you want to have just the right board, and it's like playing this dancing game. It's a huge subject. Actually, in Preflop Mastery, made this shameless plug, but I actually made an entire video about getting 3-bet with jacks when you're out of position, because it's just like one of those spots. So I would say the first thing to consider is just your opponent and understanding where they're at in general. So the way I like to think about it is just I like to be kind of binary. Are they weak and wide, meaning they're likely to be weak and their hand range is wide, or are they tight and their hand range is narrow? And depending on how you answer that fundamental question will give you insight into how to potentially play this spot. So almost always you're going to be calling with these hands pretty much regardless. So you're not, even if he's weak and wide, you're still not going to 4-bet just because you don't really get action from worse hands, and you put yourself in a really tough spot by 4-betting with these types of hands. If he's tight and narrow, you're definitely not going to 4-bet, but you still can't really fold because even if he has ace-king, you're getting the right odds to call, or ace-queen or king-queen, you're getting the right odds to call against those hands. Your hand just has too much equity. And also, if he does have aces and you call with 10s, you hit a 10, you can bust him. So no matter what situation you're in, you really can't fold, and you really can't 4-bet. So you're going to be calling regardless. So then you're like, well, why do you care if he's weak or wide or tight and narrow? Well, because post-flop is where the real decision-making comes into play, okay? So it's really about understanding where he's at pre-flop so that you can then fundamentally navigate post-flop play. So for example, if you think he's tight and narrow, you're going to call pre-flop with the mindset of, I'm calling to hit a set so I can bust him if he has aces, therefore I'm going to check fold if I don't hit, or maybe check call once, or I'm going to check raise if I hit a set, or check call with a set and trap him depending on the board texture, etc. Okay, so you have a fundamental plan because he's over here, therefore you're going down this road. If he's weak and wide because you think he's picking on you, or there's dead money in the pot, or he's just a loose, crazy aggro player, kind of like the one that we just saw in the hand my client Max sent me, where the guy's raising 40% of the time and c-betting 100%. If he's that type of player, okay, now he's weak and wide. Okay, you're still going to call pre-flop, but you're calling with a different mindset. You're calling to trap him, and you're planning on calling down post-flop on multiple streets. You're planning on defending your raise, calling a 3-bet, and then check calling down on multiple board textures. So that's kind of what you want to understand. And that's, in some of the hands I played in spots like these, that's kind of led me to my conclusions. So some of the decisions I make, even on the flop or the turn or the river, I played a famous hand with jacks where I ended up calling a big raise out of position pre-flop, and on the flop and the turn in the river on live at the bike, I ended up making a big hero call because of my read pre-flop. So it was important for me to understand, okay, I think I'm getting re-raised by this player, and that's going to lead me to make a different decision on the river than if I thought he was raising me with a really, really strong hand. So that's a little bit about how I navigate those spots. I would say to check out the intro to hand reading as well. It's a free download, and it's a really good process.
I have it, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good process to help you read post-flop where your opponent's likely at. I hope that helps, Martin. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it's hard on even if you get a small board too, you don't know if he has overpair or not. Even if, it's hard. I mean, the only good board is for you is if you flop a set, obviously.
Yeah, it is tough. But look, making good decisions in tough spots is what's going to separate you from the pack. So you can't be afraid of being in a tough spot. Like kind of like that last hand we saw with Mac, like checking the river. It puts you in a tough spot. It's almost easier just to bet, because if you bet and he raises, you fold. If you bet and he calls and he has you beat, well, whatever. You're kind of like not making a decision. You see what I'm saying? Like betting is almost like preventing you from having to make a tough decision, right? So it's almost easier to bet. But the higher EV play would be to check, because sure, you might make a mistake if you check and he bets and you call, but you give yourself the option to either fold your hand if you're beat, or call if you have him beat. So you put yourself in a tougher spot, but that's where the better players are going to separate themselves. And through studying, through practicing, through experience, through reviewing your hands or whatever it is, you're going to make those better decisions, and that's going to yield you a higher profit. And that's where you're going, to show a long-term a win. So don't be afraid of those spots. And the only way to, and I feel like what people try to do is they try to avoid these spots. So they don't want to be in a tough spot. So they kind of just like close their eyes and like, I'm not going to put myself in this spot. I'm just going to go all in on the flop, or I'm going to, just check fold the flop because I'm out of here. One over card. Like I didn't hit a set. I'm out of here. Like I don't want to get bluffed, or I don't want to check call the flop and then not know what to do on the turn. I'm out of here. But what you want to do is you want to get comfortable playing in tough spots. You want to get good at playing in tough spots. You want to get good at making decisions that other people aren't good at, because that is your win rate. That's how you're going to make money. You're going to make money by making better decisions than other people in tough spots. I mean, anyone could, not taking anything away from you, Steve, but like I'm sure you'd agree, it's easy to play this situation when you flop a set. Like nobody's going to make any money there, in the sense that like, if I flop a set, if you flop a set, if a monkey flops a set, we're all gonna make money. You just put the money in and you make money. So it's when you don't flop a set that you have to focus on those hands, those situations. I would take those situations to the lab. I would review those hands. I would study those hands. I would talk those hands with other people. Plug into a group of people, a community, friends, a network, whatever it is, to help you get through those hands. And that's where you're going to see those results.
Yes, thank you.
You got it, my man. Much love, brother.
Love the content.
Thanks, man.
buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks for following the channel. Appreciate your support, buddy. All right, we got Dr. Ancour here. You got a question, my man? What's up, Dr. Ancour?
Hi, Alec. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. You mind being on video? I don't want to throw you on without asking.
Yeah, I'm on.
Oh, all right. What's up, buddy? Where are you from?
I'm from India,
Awesome. Which part?
in Central India.
Okay. I've only been to Goa. I was there for poker, but
Oh, great.
I know that's like saying, oh, the U.S. I've been in New York. It's like,
It's only allowed offshore. It's not legal in India per se.
Yeah, actually, we went on the Delta Royale, a little cruise ship,
Yeah.
which went like, let's say a half a mile into the harbor, and then we could legally play because it wasn't in India.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Great,
exactly.
great. I'm loving your stream. I'm following your stream and watching your YouTube videos, your plays. Simply fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, thanks a lot. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. So what can I help with, man? What's your question?
My question is like, is there any percentage of going all in with bullets in a middle position? Like there are two wishes and what strategy pick to win in a tournament in 10 15 middle position?
Hold on, you cut out a little bit there. Your question was, is there any percentage of going all in with aces in mid position?
In a tournament with 10 to 12 big blinds, like no stack.
Yeah, what are you asking? Should you go all in or should you min raise? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, well, it depends on a few factors. And I know you guys love and hate these answers that I never give you a straight one. And it's because poker is not so easy that you can just always apply one strategy and it's going to win. I mean, that's not necessarily true. It will always be a winning strategy if you have 10 big blinds and you go all in with aces, or 20 big blinds. You can have 100 big blinds and go all in with aces. It's a winning strategy. The question that I think you're asking me is, which strategy wins the most, right? So every strategy is going to win as long as you don't fold. But and that's a tough question to answer because there's multiple ways of answering that question as well. So if you answer it from a theory standpoint, right, and you look at what's called a push-fold chart, which tells you which hands to go all in with and which hands to fold, or like how a computer would play. A computer would never limp in, or a computer would probably never min raise. It would probably just go all in or fold when it has 10 big blinds. But that's a fine way to play, and that's a profitable play. And the computer does that because it keeps ranges balanced, and it thinks about how it's going to play a long-term strategy over a million hand sample size, and it has to take those things into account. But you're not in that situation, right? You're in this, so it's important to step back and realize where you are. You're in a tournament. You're playing this tournament one time. You're playing against these players one time. You have aces one time. So you're not running this simulation a million times to the point where they can say, oh, he min-raised, therefore it's aces, and he jammed, therefore it's Jack-10 suited, or vice versa. They don't know what your range is. They don't know that your min-raise means this or your limp means that or whatever, because they haven't seen enough hands that you've played in that same situation. Because you have 12 big blinds, they haven't seen you limp in 50 times and raise 50 times and min raise 50 times and shove 50 times and go to showdown to understand what each play means. So they don't know. So they can only infer what they think it means. All this is to say that what you should be doing in those spots, in my opinion, is taking each situation and exploiting it for the most possible. So you should be maximizing your expectation by making the play you think is going to make the most money that one time. And that's much more important in a tournament where tables are changing, stack sizes are changing, players are changing, situations are changing. You're never in the same situation twice. It's much more important to take the maximally exploitative line in a tournament than it is in a cash game in your regular home game where you're playing with the same players day in and day out. They see you at the consistent stack sizes, they see you in a consistent situation, and they can infer what your bets mean. So now that we have that clear, that that's going to be the direction we're going to go, the question is which strategy is the best in that situation. So I would say that you wouldn't, while it is profitable just to shove all in, and again, 10 big blinds is different than 12 big blinds, is different than 14 big blinds, so I know we're splitting hairs here, but it is different. When you start to have a little bit bigger big blind stack size, like 10, 12, 13, I would not go all in, because while it is profitable, I would want to double up, maximize my chance, not just of winning the pot, but doubling up with aces. And I think the best way to double up with aces is to min raise and then get the big blind to call you so that you have a better chance of him flopping, top pair or mid pair, and then check shoving the flop. So my plan would be, okay, I have 12 big blinds. I make it 2 big blinds. The big blind calls, right? He's going to call very often when he's calling 1 big blind to win a pot of 5 big blinds. He's going to be calling very wide. Even, 9-10 off might call you. So he calls the big blind. Now the pot is, 5 or 6 big blinds, depending on the ante. You have 11 big blinds left. Whatever the flop is, I would bet, 1.5 or 2 big blinds. And then I would hope that he hits some piece of it and then he jams all in, thinking that I have air and that I'll fold. So that's kind of like the 1-2 punch I would go for to set him up in that situation. So, yeah, man, does that answer your question?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Alec.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for your time, doctor. Cheers, buddy. All right, guys. So going back to chat, you guys are amazing. Let's see what everybody's saying. Matthew, The Time, Poker Nemesis, appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to take a question from chat here. If you guys want to hop on the Zoom call, you're welcome to do that. Click the link below. You could hop on and ask me something on the air. In the meantime, I'm going to say hi to my friends here in the chat. Got another guy on Zoom here that's popping in. Sorry, someone tried to get on Zoom. I got to manually. I should have changed the settings. You have to manually approve people coming in here, which was stupid on my part. I'm sorry about that. All right, let me read this. The Time asked, how do I play average overcards 7 through 9, the same as older ones? I'm not sure what you're asking. If you're asking a general question or specific. All right, I think I'm going to take one more call on Zoom here. We're going to do this again on Friday. We have another one of my clients hopping on. Going to be a great hand. I don't know what the hand is yet, but I know it's going to be a great hand because he always has exciting, interesting hands. He plays some live poker. He plays 5-10 in the East Coast, so he plays some relatively high stakes live poker. So it's going to be a different format, different things to cover. Should be interesting. Let's see. What's up, guys? How's everybody doing? Appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for everyone's support and love. You guys are awesome. Having fun with everybody. I'm trying to make this a more regular thing. This is fun for me too. It's good to do this. It's trying to make light out of the lockdown and try and make some positive situations. And the YouTube Live is definitely something that I wouldn't always do or have time for or be able to consistently schedule. And now I can because I have a very simple life and consistent schedule. And so it allows me to do these things, and I'm having fun doing this. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you guys being here. And thanks for all your support. All right, I'll take one more question. Oh, we got someone that raised their hand. What's up? Yeah, go ahead. You're on the air, buddy. What's up? Oh, sorry. No. Sorry. Now you're on the air. What's up, buddy? Go ahead.
It's me again.
Hey, what's up?
Another one. Hi. Any merit to calling in position with ace king after raise versus 3-betting?
Yeah, I mean, look.
Button or cut. Say your button or cut off instead of re-raising. Somebody opens mid position.
Yeah.
MP1 or so.
So it really just. So it's important that you specify the situation, because saying any merit to calling a single raise pre-flop, yes, because under the gun opening and you being an under the gun +1 in a tournament, for example, when you're trying to get someone to shove all in behind you is different than the cutoff opening and you on the button, right? So it's like there's so many nuances to this question, and every single one,
yeah,
whether
more
it's
specific cash game, not tournament, just cash games. You're both, 100 blinds, just regular, no really information on your opponent.
Okay.
Just in general, is there as a strategy any bet? I mean, maybe mix it, but just ace king, versus a mid position raise.
And you're in position.
Is there any merits to raising or just 3-betting or calling?
You're in position, correct?
Yes, in position.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely the default play is to go for a 3-bet here. So I would say I would have to have a reason to call because the default is to 3-bet. So anytime I'm never opposed to deviating from what, a pre-flop chart says or anything like that. I'm like the last one never be like, never do that. I'll always say, yeah, like look for a reason to do it. But you have to have a reason, right? You can't just you can't do something that you're not sort of supposed to do unless you have a reason that you're not supposed to do it, right? Otherwise, why would you do it, right? If you're always safe making the default play that you know is the most profitable. And the most profitable thing to do with ace king is to 3-bet because you're favored to have the best hand, you're in position, you want to build the pot, and it's the right hand to 3-bet, right? It's like a mathematically correct play or something like that, or like under the gun +2 if under the gun opens or something like that. The main reason for flatting, even if it's button versus mid position, fine, is just that you make money in poker by having your opponents think you have the opposite of what you do. Okay, so you make money when your opponents think your hand is different than what it is. And when you flat, they don't think you have ace king. So like a good observant opponent will say he cannot have ace king. And that might lead him to do something different than had he known you could have ace king. So for example, let's say the flop comes, ace high, ace 7 deuce, okay? And you're on the button. The guy might think to himself, well, he didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so he can't have ace king. He didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so he probably can't have ace queen, because ace queen is kind of a 3-bet too, right? Facing like a late position open and you're on the button. Ace queen is also like a game theory 3-bet. It's a hand you're probably supposed to 3-bet. So they're going to eliminate hands from your range. They're going to eliminate ace king. They're going to eliminate ace queen. And now what? Well, now the flop is ace 7 deuce. Maybe they're going to bluff you more often. Maybe they're going to bluff you with they have 8-9. They bet the flop. They turn a gut shot, whatever. They just go for it. They just bomb the turn and they bomb the river because they're like, well, he can't have ace king. He can't have ace queen. I can have ace king. Me as the mid position raiser, right? Hypothetically, I can have ace queen. So my range is now stronger, and so I'm going to go ahead and bet here. And so they just start bombing. They just start bluffing. And so, of course, you have to have the right situation. You have to have the right opponent. You have to have the right flop. You have to have the right run out. I mean, things have to go your way, which is why, going back to what I said before, generally 3-betting is better because you don't always get these perfect scenarios that you can leverage and take advantage of. So it could work out in your favor. It might make the hand harder to play. It might make it more tricky. But I'm not opposed to it. I would say it's probably, I'm just throwing out a number. I would say it's probably like a 10% play where like you're going to throw that out there like maybe like, in your game 10% of the time. A computer would do it 0% of the time, just to be clear. A computer would never flat call there. It would always 3-bet. But I'm okay with having it in your game. Just don't get carried away with it. Don't just make it your default because you don't want to play a big pot or something like that. So I think with a certain frequency, it could be right, and it's something to go for.
But out of position, always check it. Would you always check out of position?
What do you mean? Always 3-bet or always check?
No, raising first, then somebody 3-bets. Would you just flat with your ace king out of position?
Hold on. So walk me through this situation specifically so I make sure we're on the same page.
Let's say you're under the gun, you raise, you get 3-bet by the button or the cutoff. Would you just flat call the ace king instead of 4-betting?
Okay, I get what you're saying. So you're
as a general.
Yeah, as a general rule. I mean, well, it depends on the positions, right? So under the gun versus the button is different than the cutoff versus the button, right? So
right.
There's a huge difference there because the types of hands you're raising with under the gun are so few, whereas the types of hands you're raising with on the cutoff are very wide. Therefore, when you 4-bet from the cutoff, it looks weaker than when you 4-bet from under the gun. Now, why is this important? Well, if your opponent is facing a 4-bet and he's only calling with, kings or aces, then it's not a great spot to 4-bet. But if your opponent's facing a 4-bet and he's going to call with ace-queen or maybe shove on a bluff or get carried away, then ace-king has a lot more merit in 4-betting. So a lot of it depends on my opponent and which position I open from, because that would dictate my strategy. A lot also depends on what I think about my opponent. Remember we talked about before, is he tight and narrow, or is he weak and wide? Right? So it depends on where I kind of categorically put him in that moment that would dictate my strategy. I'm okay. I'm more okay here with having a mixed strategy than I am in the former example. So what I mean by that is I'm more in favor of flatting here at a position when facing a 3-bet, especially if I open from early position, than I am in the previous example. So I much rather see you 3-bet with ace-king when you're on the button facing a mid-position open than because that situation I'm like more confident saying you should be 3-betting there almost always. Whereas in this situation, I think you can make a better argument for not 4-betting. So like you can make a better argument here for flatting even as a default. That would not be a bad strategy. A computer would 4-bet, so a computer would maybe flat some of the time, but it would probably 4-bet most of the time. Whereas I would actually say, you know, in practicality, it would be okay to flat more often than the computer would and not have it be as big of a mistake as not 3-betting in the previous example. So in other words, I like your deviation from standard in this scenario more than I like it in the first scenario. I hope that makes sense. And yeah, it also again is a situation where, you know, your opponent's not going to put you on ace king, right? So he's still not going to put you on ace king because you didn't 4-bet. So if the flop comes ace high, he might try and represent the ace. He might try and bluff you, and he doesn't put you on ace king. If the flop comes ace high, he just, you know, goes bonkers, bets the flop, bets the turn, bets the river. Same on a king high board. And it's a great spot where you can just pick off bluffs, pot control. And also, you know, if the flop comes, you know, 10-9-5 with a flush draw and you have ace king with no nothing, you just check fold and, you know, no harm done. Whereas if you 4-bet and then he flat calls your 4-bet, now you're in a really tough spot, out of position with awkward stack sizes, and it's not a bad situation, but the problem is that situation can lead people to make a lot of mistakes. Whereas they're less likely to make mistakes when they just flat call because the hand is easier to play. It's kind of like if you flop something, you go with it. If you don't, you don't. You can't really get in that much trouble. Whereas when you 4-bet, you can put yourself in a really tough spot. You might, you know, what do you do if he jams? Do you call? Do you fold? You might make a mistake. And then what do you do if you 4-bet and he calls and you miss the flop? Do you bet? Do you not bet? And if you bet the flop and he calls, do you bet the turn? So you're just kind of making... You make the hand harder to play, and people make more mistakes that way. I know I'm contradicting what I said before, where I said, like, you should be okay with playing tough spots. But this one is a very particularly tough spot that you can avoid, whereas the jacks hand, what I talked about before, when you're calling a re-raise out of position, you can't avoid the tough spot. You just can't avoid it. What are you going to do? Fold 2 jacks pre-flop? You just can't avoid it. This hand, you could kind of choose which, you know, the less of two evils road you want to go down. And so I'm actually more okay with people just flatting here in these sorts of spots. Hope that helps. Steve, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your question. Matthew has a few questions here. Man, Matthew's got some questions. Let me see. I'm reading here. I'm trying not to bore you while I'm reading, but are there any hands with which you would 3-bet a tight player? For sure. I mean, for sure. I'd 3-bet with aces. Stupid answer. I guess what you're saying is, are there any bluffs with which you would 3-bet a tight player? Well, sure. If a player's tight, what if he just folds off into 3-bets because he's too tight? I'll 3-bet him a lot. You know, what does tight mean? Like, tight doesn't mean anything to me. And the same thing with when people layer someone a fish. What does that mean? Is he a fish because he limp calls? Or is he a fish because he limp folds? Well, my strategy they both might be fish, but I'm going to do a completely different response against those different types of players. I actually don't like the term fish, it's called VIP, but I'm going to have a different response against each VIP, right? So what does it mean to call someone a mediocre player? What is it about them? Do they c-bet never? Do they c-bet 100% of the time? Do they fold to every c-bet, or do they never fold to every c-bet? You can be on either end of this extreme and have equal skill or lack thereof. So I'm more interested in what they're doing rather than what a label is. A label doesn't mean anything to me. So that's more what I would focus on. All right. Geneva French Alec, thanks for the live chat. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I often lose hands going to showdown where my kicker is not strong enough, like Queen Jack against King Queen on a Queen High flop. I really struggle to know when I have to fold. So this is that your opponent has a better queen versus how likely it is that they have a bluff. Okay, so you're going to want to weigh those two things. And the way to do that is to first and foremost, there's actually a 4-step process I teach in one of the courses in the membership. It's called Hand Reading Foundation, that walks you through this entire 4-step process. There's a free blog I made available too about what that 4-step process is. You can kind of work with it here on your own. Let me drop that in here. There's a few pieces of content I want to highlight here, so I'm going to drop that in here as well. Because I really think it's going to help a lot of you in this process. Hold on one second. Poker.com. Hang on, guys. Mastering. Okay, so it's called Mastering the Art of Hand Reading in Poker. And basically, if you can figure out what types of hands your opponent has with a high degree of certainty, it's a lot easier to know what to do. So you can weigh the odds that they have a queen versus the odds that they have a bluff. And the first part of that 4-step process is to figure out what their hand range is. What is their hand range? Okay. So the way I do that is I use what's called a hand range funnel. I call it a funnel because if you think about the types of hands your opponent can have, they follow the shape of a funnel. They start really wide, pre-flop. There's a lot of hands they can have pre-flop. And they progressively get narrower as the hand goes down. So by the time you get to the river, there are less hands that they can have than they can have pre-flop, right? That's intuitive. So that's why it's called a funnel. I've made that process available to you for free in my Intro to Hand Reading. So you can download that and you can see exactly how I use this process in real time at the table. And if you like the types of hands reviews I do here, where I kind of quickly pick up what types of hands they can have and what the best line is and then the strategy, it's because I've gotten comfortable with this process of hand reading, and I made it in a simple way for everyone to follow in the funnel. So the first thing you want to do is put them on a hand range. That's the thing that takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. It's hard to do that, but the funnel will help you get better. The second thing you want to do is you want to kind of divide their hands into 2 categories. You want to understand which hands are, how many bluffs do they have, and weigh that against how many value hands they have. So what hands do you beat? And what hands beat you. Then you want to calculate your odds. You want to look at the pot size, you want to look at the bet size, and you want to determine your pot odds. Then you want to calculate your break-even point. What price do you need to justify calling? Finally, in step 4, you want to put all that information together, and you basically want to say to yourself, okay, the odds I have the best hand is, let's say, 50%. And the break-even point, meaning the price I need to get, is 25%. So since the chance I have the best hand is 50%, and it's greater than my pot odds, which is 25%, I'm going to call. Because that delta between 50 and 25 is your profit. So that 25% is your profit. And that's the process I go through. It's in that blog, Mastering the Art of Hand Reading. It's in Hand Reading Foundation, which is a course inside the membership. And I walk you through it. There's 11 videos, PDFs, PowerPoints. It's all there. And I literally just spell it out for you. So that's an overview of what it is. If you want more detail, check that out. I hope that helps. Much love to you. Thanks for asking the question. All right. If you want to ask another question, I might hang around here for a few more minutes. I'm kind of having fun. I know we're going over here. My team's telling me we're going over, but I'm kind of having fun, so I might hang around here. I might hang around. 6:40. Oh my gosh, 6:40. What time is it where you guys are? I guess it's either 12:39 if you're in the East Coast, or it's 9:39. So you're having coffee with me in the morning on the West Coast, and you're having lunch with me on the East Coast. That's cool. I'm having dinner with you guys in a few minutes. Man, let's see what's up. By the way, guys, if you're still here, thank you, because you've been listening to me for an hour now. You're totally legends. But if you can do me a favor, and if you like this video, hit the like button. That's a good way to vote and let me know if I'm producing content you like or not. But secondly, if you can leave a comment below and just let me know, if you like this format, what your favorite part was, what I can do better, how I can improve. I'd like to do more of these YouTube lives, but most importantly, I'd like to make them valuable and interesting for you guys. and anything that we can do here at Conscious Poker to make it better for you, we would like to do that. So let me know in a comment below what you'd like to see more of, what your favorite part of this was, other content you'd like to see. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe if you're not already. Turn on notifications. More awesome content's coming. I have a lot of those hand reviews, like how to plan out your poker bluffs, that are coming out soon. And there's also a blog attached to those videos. So if you click the link in the description below, you'll see a blog post. And there's a lot more content on the blog post about like exactly my thought process, methodology, step-by-step processes, screenshots, equity calculators. The whole thing is there on consciouspoker.com. So definitely check out the blogs as well. There's we go a lot more in depth than we do with the YouTube videos for those looking for that next level of content. What else? All right. Reggie wants to know when I'm coming back to the USA. It's funny. Well, I call it funny, but it's more a way of saying things. What happened was I was actually going to come back, and then this whole thing happened, and obviously, they banned flights and travel. And I could have still gone back if I wanted to, but it's not in a position to want to travel. And that was like in February. So I was planning to come back. I had a flight on hold. I was getting ready. I had a suitcase packed. And then, pandemonium. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen in the world. I put out my thoughts on alectorelli.com/blog if you want to check it out. I've been releasing a lot of content about COVID and what's happening here in Italy and how I think it's likely to take shape in the US based on what's happening here, because it's kind of like living in the future. I kind of have the foresight of seeing like, okay, this is how things play out. And remember, Italy's just living in the future. We're just a month ahead of, couple weeks, 2-3 weeks ahead of New York, but maybe a month or 6 weeks ahead of potentially other cities where this hasn't arrived, and I hope it never does. But if it does, we're just 6 weeks ahead. So kind of gave me the foresight to see what's happening. So I wrote a lot of my thoughts on alectorelli.com, or I have another YouTube channel, youtube.com/alectorelli. So my personal YouTube, and I put out a video about what I think is coming and how I think this plays out over the next year. And that will dictate a lot of my strategy. If I'm right, which I hope I'm not, I think this is going to be around for a lot longer than most people think, in which case, no good. Boo-how. All right. James has a question. James, I'm going to take your question because you're on. What's up, James? James? James is here. His microphone is unmuted, but he's not talking. All right, James, if you want to hop on, hop on. If not, talk to the audience a little more. All right. James. Oh, no good. All right, guys. I think that's it for today. You guys are amazing. Much love. I'll see you on Friday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. We'll be here for another YouTube Live. You guys are amazing. Appreciate your support. Stay safe out there. Peace, love, and social distance. I'll see you guys in the next one.